Hello. What I thought I'd do in this video is to take you through a client video that I made, breaking down the process for producing it in general and kind of any creative decisions and technical decisions that I made along the way. I did 2 edits of this film. I'll play the minute version for you now and then I'll start talking about it, and then at the end I'll play you the full 3.5 minute version.
People generally come to me because they want something that's personal to them. Some of my customers own estates. It makes sense for them to buy something that will last, 300 years, because they don't have to keep going off and replacing things that's not been made properly. There's people out there that still respect the amount of work that goes into the things that we make and are prepared to pay the money that these things cost, and in turn we get to carry on a tradition we all love and create something unique for someone that's going to last for centuries. For hundreds of years my metal work will be around, hopefully adding quality to places. That makes me feel good.
Back at the very early days of my company, so I hadn't even created it as a limited company yet, so it was just basically it was an idea, and I was sort of looking for work and looking for things to do, how to structure my days, how to create a portfolio. The portfolio was the most important thing to create. So up to that point, although I knew what I was going to be doing and I had confidence in my own abilities, you need examples, and at that point the only examples I had were YouTube vlogs. But that wasn't enough, so that's not enough to entice clients. You need to show a bit of a range, a breadth of abilities and kind of aptitudes. Really, the people that I'm going to make content for are going to be small businesses. They're going to be independent traders or kind of very small companies, 5 people or less. Basically the same position as me. They rely on themselves to keep themselves going. There's no one else bringing in work. So marketing is important to them, but value for marketing is also very important. So as a person that works with their hands, they create something. So there's something visual was going to happen as a result of the work that they do and as a result of the video that I was going to make. It was quite a challenge in that I knew that the room was going to be dark, but the activity that they were going to be doing was going to be very bright because of, it's fire. So I sent off a message to the owner, his name's Alex Smith, and he came back to me and he was interested, and I went over there and we had a chat. We talked about the possibilities, we talked about how long it would take and kind of what would be involved. What I wanted to know from Alex was what he wanted from a promotional video. So it's an idea that he hadn't thought of before I'd emailed him, but once I emailed him, he was quite into the idea. His work, generally speaking, comes from 2 areas. He is a tutor, so you go in and you learn blacksmithing. You make simple things, the kind of thing that you can make in a couple of hours. And he also does bespoke pieces, so he's an artist. He's an artisan blacksmith, and that was the bit that he wanted to promote. The courses are seasonal, so they don't really happen throughout the summer because it's just too hot in that place, and people can think of other things to do with their summer days. But so he's kind of had this gap of about 4 months that he was looking to try and fill with the production of this bespoke stuff for people that had come to him with commissions. So that was the focus. So we talked about that. We got to that far, and he is the business owner, so he is the face of the business, and he needed to be in the video. He'd never done a bit of video before, so he was nervous about being in it. So the way that I break that down is, what are you comfortable doing? And we'll start with that. So in his case, he's comfortable being a blacksmith, he's comfortable creating stuff, and he's comfortable talking about it because he's a passionate, knowledgeable person. But talking about himself kind of from scratch is a difficult one. So if you sit anyone down in front of a camera, it's a very alien environment anyway, particularly if you ask them to talk to the lens, because people just don't do that. Literally the only people that talk to lenses are trained presenters on television, because they're used to reading auto cues which go in front of the screen, which I've tried before. It's a difficult skill to stop your eyes flicking from side to side as you're reading. But most people just can't do that. And so that particularly if there is a screen in front of them, they get distracted by all sorts of things around. And this happens to beginner vloggers as well. You kind of see them looking at the screen, which is just to the side of the camera, rather than at the lens, which is where the audience is. So the way that we structured it was that he made for me a piece of the kind of thing that he would show someone how to do in one of the courses, except that I didn't then do it. So that, I did actually. At the end of the day, I actually made something which is in my garden. But he made a rose for me, an iron rose, from start to finish. So from kind of a piece of metal, and turned it in and did sort of the hammering and heating and all of that sort of thing. And while he was doing it, I got him to talk about what he was doing. Now I knew that in the environment that we were in, the audio was highly unlikely to be suitable because there's all this banging going on, and there's no way that you can train someone who's not used to doing it to not talk while they're doing something noisy. But what I wanted was him to open up about what he was doing while he was doing it, to get him used to talking whilst there was a camera present. So I had 2 cameras on him, pointing at him all the time, and I was asking him questions throughout. So I'm trying to get from him what are the things that are worth talking about his business and about what he wants to promote about his business. But the only way I can do that is to get him to think about it while he's making something of the thing that he's comfortable making. So we went through this process, and it took maybe an hour and a half of him making this rose for me. Well, I didn't know it was for me at the time. He gave it to me at the end of the day. And then, so at the end, he's made something, he's happy, we've warmed the room up, which is important because it was in the middle of winter. So he's enthused, he knows what he's talking about because he's already talked about it. And so then I sat him down in a chair and we did an interview. So we turned all the noise off, all the fire and everything. So we had a bit of a race against time before the room got so cold that we started getting condensation coming out of his mouth because it was that cold in there. So we had like half an hour, and we just talked. So I asked him questions. Basically, I asked him questions which were the same as the things that he'd already been talking about while he was making the rose, but I asked them in a structured way to try and get him to talk in complete sentences. So that when you want someone to talk about something, you have to ask them to kind of ask the question in their response. So you don't want them to just say yes, no, yes, that's good, that's correct. You want them to talk lucidly about what they're doing. So we did this interview, and I had 2 cameras on him. I asked him to ignore the camera. So I was sat next to the camera, but I never referred to the camera at any point. He was talking to me, and it just happened to be that this was being recorded. So really the camera was just a thing in his peripheral vision. So it's the equivalent of me looking over here. So if you do this, and if you keep talking to this direction, and if you keep an eye line with someone, because there is an eye line to keep, then it looks quite natural. It looks like an interview. And then I would take this footage of someone nearly looking at the camera but never looking at the camera, and splice it in with the action of the thing being made, and then kind of, I'd fill in with all the B-roll stuff. So I went around the room and sort of got shots of tools laying around. I did a few fakery things, so I kind of got his apron and sort of laid it over an anvil, picked it up off the anvil, got some tools, put them down, picked them up. And so I was trying to kind of create a scene of where we were. I wanted to make sure that the audio was nice and crisp, because I knew that I was going to use the audio over the top of the visuals, and so I wanted them to carry their own weight. You don't want to be straining to hear something, so it's important to be able to hear what Alex was talking about. And at the time, I was still using a drone. There was a bit of for a little while, there was this grey area in the what you can and can't do, or could and couldn't do with drone footage. Now they've tightened up that wording so that if you think you might be paid for it or might be remunerated for it in any way, then it's professional work. So effectively, every YouTuber that you see who has got a monetized channel who is using a drone should be commercially licensed. It's unequivocal, you should be. Or rather, you must be. When Alex started talking, I was noting down kind of what he was saying in a little notebook. Not the whole thing. I wasn't taking shorthand or anything. I was just noting the important bits that he was talking about. So it was about the passion, it was about the artisan thing, it was about the history, it was about his pride, it was about his skill, and picking out those words. So I knew that, right, I'm going to use that, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use this. Therefore, if I'm using that, I need some B-roll that relates to that. I've just filmed the thing of him making something, so have I got enough there in what he was doing to illustrate the thing that he's talking about right now? Because I wanted to do this all in one visit. So I'm now going to show you the full 3.5 minute version, which goes into more depth about the history and kind of what Alex wants from his clients, and just kind of take it all in.
The artist blacksmithing movement has caught on a bit, and it's helped the craft to revive itself. Luckily, there's people out there that still respect the amount of work that goes into the things that we make and are prepared to pay the money that these things cost. And in turn, we get to carry on a tradition we all love and create something unique for someone that's going to last for centuries. Can focus all my attention on it when I'm working away. Everything else goes out the window, and it's addictive. Some people learn through being practical. So if you taught me Pythagoras theorem sat down in a classroom looking at a board, I just wouldn't get it. But if you taught it to me while we're making some spiral handrails for somewhere, it would click because it's having a practical use. There's a lot of technique, coordination in using the hammer, and the technique in using the anvil in different ways. To have a bit of an imagination when it comes to designing. People generally come to me because they want something that's personal to them. It's a good feeling because you're putting a part of your character is going to be here for a long time. Very skilled craftsmanship where people really know what they're doing is getting less and less because people are willing to cut corners because it's cheaper. And then eventually it has to be repaired. So some of my customers own estates, and it makes sense for them to buy something that will last 300 years because they don't have to keep going off and replacing things that's not been made properly. So to find skilled craftsmen is very important for people like that. So I guess that's another nice part, is that it's made, in some cases it's made just a mile away from where the product's actually going to fit. Yeah, it sort of represents the area. Yeah, I make my own tools. Generally whatever I need for a particular job I'll make up. So if you've got a lot of repeat bends, then I'll make a jig up to get those bends exactly the same. So tool making is a big part of blacksmithing. It adds another edge to it, where you sort of problem solving. You're thinking about how this tool could help you on a daily basis, make things faster for you or more accurate. For hundreds of years, my metalwork will be around, hopefully adding quality to places. And something people enjoy to look at, and that makes me feel good.
So let me know what you think. That's 2 different versions of the same thing that you've seen, plus my rationale for how I went about creating it. It's at the time, I did the best that I could with the kit that I've got. I actually don't have any of that kit anymore. I don't have either of the cameras. I don't have the camera stabilization. The only thing that I've got that I still use from that day are the memory cards and the microphones. So things change, but it's kind of it still holds up in theme. There'll be a time where it becomes technically not good enough because it's only in 1080p. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and if there's anything else that you want to know about this sort of thing, and I'll see you again soon.